outside London, there is the Brighton and Hove City Council has started a new form of registration for children based on gender. They say that they are giving out a registration form that encourages parents to sit down with children, and when you're saying what gender the child is, you can mark male or female, regardless of your actual anatomical gender identity, but rather your personal gender identity of your 4-year-old child. So this is the letter given out by the City Council of Brighton and Hove. It says, we recognize that not all children and young people identify with the gender they were assigned at birth or may identify as a gender other than male or female. However, the current system set nationally only record gender as male or female. Please support your child to choose the gender they most identify with. Or if they have another gender identity, please leave this blank and discuss with your child's school. So there's that. That's one side of it. And a lot of people are saying that's a good idea. There's another side. Here's a side from one parent who tweeted back, Brighton and Hove Council, asking 4-year-olds what gender they identify with. PC madness. At 4, I thought I was a dog. So that is the discussion.
I think she might have had issues.
Yeah, it turned out she was just a jerk.
I'm very curious what you guys think. I think this is too much.
I think that this is not actually about what the parents think it's about or what the article thinks it's about. I think that the only reason that well, maybe there would still be controversy, but the reason there's this particular type of controversy is because the letter had language that was slightly too vague. I don't think that they mean choose as in talk about, weigh the options, and maybe you'll go this way, maybe you'll go that way. I think they mean select on the paper what their identity is. It doesn't mean you're going to try to convince them to go one way or the other. It's just if they're going that way, and a very small percentage of children will, then on the paper choose the one that represents that. It doesn't mean try to sway them to be something other than their anatomical sex.
Right. There was part of the dialogue back and forth. There's also another like 24-part gender identity scale that another paper issued by a school district offered to their kids. And as part of this dialogue, the Brighton and Hove Council wrote back, we consider discussions around gender identity to be an option for parents if they feel it is appropriate rather than an obligation. And they wanted to address those concerns about whether they were being specific enough in their wording.
Yeah. Well, I disagree with them there.
Well, so I think that they're doing it out of a good place. They want to give people an option. Like they don't want to foreclose, hey, if that's how you feel, no, we're not going to allow it. I get it in that sense. I think the 25 options, including trigender, gender fluid, gender queer, and 22 others might be a bit much. And that's a slightly different case, not necessarily the 4-year-olds. If it was for 4-year-olds, not a little too much, way too much.
Yes.
Okay.
Like if you look at the toys they play with, it's like, can you get this marble that's on a track to the other side? Like that's tough for them just to move it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, they're not that smart. Yeah, let's just recognize that.
They almost have like a child's mind.
Yeah.
So to ask them whether they're trigender, they'd be like I know because I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, right? And they don't. I'm not like they get that there are boys and that there are girls, right? If you ask them what a trigender is, they'd be like,
right? Yeah.
So,
okay, I'll try anything. I just tried spaghetti for the first time last week.
I would just say in that case it's a non-issue. Like all they're saying is that if your kid is expressing that they feel like they have a gender identity that is different than their biological sex, then be receptive to that. And if you want to let the school know about that so that the school can do what's right and be tolerant and all that, then you can let us know that. The idea that anybody at the school is like, we're going to try to convert some. Nobody wants that. Transgender people don't want that. But that's what some of the parents seem to think is going on.
It seems like it's PC madness, as in like, I think what the school's trying to do is say there's very obviously a growing momentum behind the trans community and any kind of gender spectrum identification system. And the Brighton and Hove School District is saying, we like that. We're going to be helpful in any way we can. here's our first attempt. And as in most first attempts, especially if you deal with children, like the first attempt, not necessarily always the most sleek and sophisticated, but it seems like they're trying. There's a dialogue that needs to happen to find out the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so let me clarify. I largely agree with John. The trigender thing is not for the 4-year-olds. Those are two different pamphlets, and that you fill out in two different situations. And I'm not saying that some people aren't trigender. I'd have to look up exactly what that is out of the 25 gradations. But my point of disagreement is actually a very small one. You do this in junior high, okay, they're hitting puberty, we're having a discussion, and you could begin to have a little bit more meaningful discussion about gender identity with your kids. But so they started 4, that's way too early. The kids don't know. And so, like, even asking kids at that point, to me, is like planting a thought in their head and I'm not saying the school's doing that, I'm just saying if you're asking people to, like, fill out a pamphlet with, okay, is your kid,
How tall is
trans
your
or
kid?
not, whatever. Like, I think that it's okay to stick with male and female until junior high. And then if you've got someone who's like, no, I'm not in either one of those brackets, okay, then let's have a conversation and let's certainly be open to that.
I disagree, and the reason I disagree, and again, I don't think we're talking about, like, people are going to get, like, freaked out about this because the transgender community, depending on how you measure it, is something like 0.3% of the population. It's a very small group. The reason that we have to have the conversations is because, despite the fact that it's a small group, there's a lot more people who want to make their lives a living hell and who will fight against stuff like this, not because of concerns about exactly what age is appropriate, but because they want to hurt those people for being different. I don't think they want the parents to ask, hey, do you think that you're a boy? Do you think that you're a girl? They simply want them to recognize if the kids are trying to communicate to them something. Because I agree, it seems impossible that kids that are 4 years old would do this sort of thing, except we know from hearing from parents that it is true.
And
some kids are 4 and think. And here's why it's important to start so soon.
But you
because
don't know
there's
if
a lot
they're
of
gay
years
or transgender
There's a
or
great-
any of those things at 4.
A lot of people say that they knew that they were gay from their earliest memories, and the reason it matters is there's a lot of years between 4 and 14. And eventually, the only thing you can do by trying to convince those people that, oh, you're probably just wrong, or oh, you'll come around to it, is probably fucking them up for 10 years, based on what I have read from a lot of transgender people.
So I'm making a lot of faces, and sorry about that. And look, I'm not disputing that people who are gay or trans, etc., knew from a very early age. Of course. I get that. That's like, did I know that I was straight from an early age? I think so, because even in kindergarten, I liked the girls. I didn't want to admit it because they were supposed to have cooties, right? But I actually thought they were cuties. so I understand all that stuff, right? But at the same time, and now I'm going to say something controversial. Like, kids are super impressionable. If we're having these conversations with them before they bring it up, right? If they bring it up, don't be like, oh, that's it, I hate you, I'm going to disown you. Like, of course not. Be open, be receptive, right? But and I'm not saying that's the case here, as you say, it's just a checkbox, right? But I think there is a growing sense that, like, hey, I should ask my 4-year-old, what are you? Are you cisgender or whatever you are?
And I don't think you
and I
should.
think you're planting a thought there. And kids are, and I'm not saying like, oh, and if they became trans, that's terrible, right?
No, I'm not saying you're
the
saying
kids
that.
are impressionable.
I also think
and I'll go further, and I'll make a prediction that you're going to start to see that there'll be a lot more than 0.3% of kids claiming that they're trans, and then we're going to find out later that a lot of them were like, oh, it turns out I wasn't, but that's, but somebody told me, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's a great Modern Family where Lily, the adopted daughter of Cam and Mitchell, is like, I'm gay, and the reason she came out with I'm gay, but it turns out the reason she said that is because she just wanted to be like her parents. So it comes back to this problem I have with the issue, is like they're trying to fix it by making the label more receptive to all the different ways a kid can interpret it. But it's still a label. And their label is still male and female. So regardless of what you do, you're still bringing them down to male and female. And I know you're motivated by this attempt to make it easier to understand and less insane to these children who are just discovering everything for the first time. But I just think that, like, if you're a Brighton and Hove City Council, and your priority is education, when you release something like this, you have to cite some kind of study that's been done. You can't just arbitrarily try to introduce something like this. You have to, and they tried to do it with their letter. They're trying to, they said, I'm sure they took every precaution going in, and they're being super receptive after people have responded. And I totally hear the parent who's saying, like, my kid thinks she's a dog, or I thought I was a dog. Like, there's gonna be a lot of things along the way, compounded by the fact that you're always gonna try to make your kid's life and development perfect, and you don't know what the thing is you're gonna do that's gonna totally mess them up. It could be this. It could be like not listening to a story when they wanted to tell you a story, and then from then on they hold you guilty. Like, it's so arbitrary. It's so arbitrary that, like, they're trying, everyone's trying, and I don't think anyone's being mean in this situation. I think we have to put every resource possible into making sure that this process is the most helpful and not hurtful.
I think the school's heart was in the right place. They were trying to do the right thing. And, we have slight disagreements here on when you ask that question. It just comes down to that. And
and my stance overall, last point I'll make, is I don't think the way it should be structured is not to ask the question, it's to listen to what your kid says. If they are saying it, if they're saying that they're confused, or if they're saying, it's not to say, hey, are you this, are you this, are you this, are you this, are you this? It's just listen to them.